Hi, everybody. Chef Michael Sullivan here with you with a short supplemental video to our Chicken Kiev class that's coming up here pretty soon. This is about compound butter. So if you're seeing it through another thread or through other means, that is the main focus of this video. I just want to talk really quickly about how easy and effective it is to make compound butter. Basically, all that you're doing is you're adding herbs, aromatics to that butter to give it a little bit more life, to get it some complexity of flavor. And you can use this for myriad applications. We're putting it inside of our Chicken Kiev, but this can just as easily go into other roulade forms of proteins rolled up with other ingredients inside of there. Make a large portion of this, slice it into coins, put those coins on your steak as a finishing touch when you're grilling them or right before you serve them, put it on rice, pilaf, etc. Many different applications here. What our recipe calls for Chicken Kiev is making a compound butter with thyme and tarragon being the lead flavoring roles in this particular case. But it can be really whatever you want. I oftentimes will mix that up, even if it is a dish where I've got specific goals and specific flavors trying to tie in, like tarragon and thyme. I might be throwing rosemary and chives like I am here today. I might also put garlic and shallots into my compound butter, or onions for that matter. Caramelized onions are a pretty common thing that you'll sometimes see. I will just say this about that. Adding any particular aromatic vegetables to the mix, especially those in the allium family, I suggest that you saute them briefly first. Now, it would definitely behoove you to use butter as you're sauteing fat to get this done. But in doing so, you're going to prevent these allium from producing sulfurous gases, unpleasant flavors and aromas as they sit inside of that butter. Now, the butter is going to preserve it, but that's not going to stop the enzymes of these foods from basically breaking them down as they're set inside of the fat. So I recommend sauteing them briefly first so that you can draw a little bit of moisture out, sort of stall the production of the sulfurous gases and the activation of those enzymes, and then mix them in. Cool them first, of course, because we're dealing with butter that we want to remain solid, and then go ahead and mix them into your compound butter. So I'm going to bring it down to my cutting board here really quickly and show you how I get this whole thing done. Starting with butter that is absolutely room temperature. I'm starting with a good butter. The quality of my butter really matters in this case. So I've got Kerrygold Pure Irish butter. This is the unsalted version I'm using here today, and then I'll add my own salt to this. But when I throw my herbs in, I want to make sure that my butter is really soft. You could use a microwave. I would do this no more than 3 to 5 seconds at a time, but let it rest. If you do have to do this a couple of times, let it rest for a good 20 seconds before you start that again, so that you can really make sure that you are not melting the butter. You don't want streaks. Remember that butter is an emulsion of fat solids and liquid, and much of that liquid is water. So go ahead and get yourself set up with a butter that's nice and room temp. Cold will not work for this. Go ahead and get yourself a whisk, a nice sturdy whisk. I've got a balloon whisk here that has this ring at the top to hold the wires together. And when I grip this whisk, I'm going to grip it mostly on the wires themselves. I've got some of the handle in there too, but just to try to keep this together so I'm not torquing these too much. This can be a little bit rough on the connection points where your handle meets the wires. So just be careful with that. And when you do so, try to keep this down on the cutting board or surface that you're working on. And then you might have to use another spatula. I've got a silicone spatula here that's actually designed for using with a blender. It's a blender spatula. That's kind of a neat one. And this is going to help not only to separate these ingredients, but to also get them where they're going afterwards. So I sort of break them up with the whisk, and then I might just press them together using my spatula. And then if I feel that I've got a whippable product with all the herbs already in place inside of the butter, I might return to that whisk to get a slight aeration to try to get a little bit of air inside of the mix, but that's not 100% necessary. I just really kind of need to get these guys all spread together. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of salt here for one moment. There we go. And just spread this right inside of here. And now that I feel pretty confident that not only are all of my herbs mixed into the butter, but that they are evenly distributed throughout the butter, I'm going to go ahead and get myself a nice portion of this onto my spatula. Get my whisk back to the side here. And I'm more or less trying to get this into a roll shape, but the plastic wrap that I'm using is going to do most of that work for me. So the first thing I need to do is just sort of mold this very briefly. The heat of my hands itself will melt this butter. So I'm not trying to spend a whole lot of time with it in my hands. And once I've got it in place, I set it right down there on the edge of the plastic wrap. And it's important that we do this in a specific way. A lot of times you'll see recipes will call for you to put it in the center and then just sort of fold the plastic wrap over and roll it. I advise you not to do this because that creates a risk that if you press too hard when you roll it forward, that the butter will take some of the plastic into it. And then when you unwrap it, you will have an inconsistency. It sort of looks like a comma shape in the length of the butter, and you might lose some of it, and at very least it won't be consistent, so therefore it won't necessarily cook consistently or melt consistently in the finished product. So I'm just taking one edge and I'm rolling it forward and I go all the way across, and then I just take these ends here and I squeeze them. What I'm trying to do is get the air out. I don't want air inside of here, so I sort of squeeze from the butter to the ends, and then I just roll in one direction. So I'm starting here, rolling forward, and this puts tension and twists the plastic wrap. Now, when you do this, you want to have a good grip on the plastic, so you're making sure that you are really creating that tension. And you've got an opportunity here to form this. If you wanted this to be a little bit longer, you could always go back in here and massage this, sort of roll it back and forth between your hands and get it a little bit longer. If you need it to be a little bit more stout, then just go ahead and do more twisting, but be careful because there is a point where it will start to come out of the plastic wrap as well. But we call this the Tootsie Roll twist, where you're creating that tension like so. And then if you were doing a large version of this, even a small version, I guess it kind of works, you can just sort of tie these ends together to create a little bit more tension. And then we're going to put this inside of the freezer. And then this is what we're going to be rolling up inside of our chicken breast for the chicken Kiev. Now, of course, if you made a larger version of this, you could get like a quarter size or a $50 coin if you were to unroll it and slice it. And that's what I would be putting on my pork chops and my steaks and things like that. Okay, so that's our little lesson on making compound butter. We're going to need to make sure that this butter is refrigerated for a good long while. Usually it only takes about an hour for it to solidify inside of the freezer. I like to give it a good 2 hours if I can. I will typically make this a day, 2 days in advance before making my chicken Kiev. But also, if I've got a lot of butter and I'm going to be whisking things together anyway, sometimes I'll just go ahead and make a bunch of batches so that I can stick this inside of the freezer and decide later what I'm going to use it for. And it's a nice little treat every once in a while to say, oh yeah, that's right, I've got that compound butter. I can throw this on this pilaf or inside of this roulade or whatever else it is. I hope that this helped you out. I look forward to seeing you in class soon. If you have any questions or need anything at all, don't forget that you can always reach me at Chef Michael at SageHarvestCookingSchool.com. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.